really quick. First instinct, first thought that pops into your mind, first answer, out of the two Jewish holy days, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is the greater day of joy and which is the greater day of sorrow? Hello everyone, I'm Rabbi Paul, your virtual rabbi, and you have found Beit Virtuali. So I'm uploading this video right before Rosh Hashanah, which means if we're taking our process, if we're taking the underlying ideas and our duties, our obligations, our mitzvot in Judaism seriously, we've already been spending 4 weeks preparing for Rosh Hashanah. We're just about to leave behind the month of Elul, and if we're taking all of this seriously, we should have spent the last 4 weeks working on a cheshbon nefesh, working on a searching inventory of our souls, looking for the people who we have hurt in this last year, looking for the relationships that we have damaged. And then traditionally, starting on Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah, that begins the period that we start taking our cheshbon nefesh and putting it into action, calling up, approaching the people that we have hurt and making amends with them. And we all kind of acknowledge this as part of our tradition, but not many people actually do this. I mean, really do this. And this video is part of my series called The Iterative Process of Judaism. This is the idea that every time that we encounter a holiday, there are a series of questions that we can ask during that holiday. And the answers will not only give us a hint of how to move forward, but also as we ask these questions over the course of the years, we're able to see if we have been doing the work of elevation, elevating ourselves, elevating each other. This is what the word holy in Judaism means. Or if we just kind of shrug our shoulders and roll our eyes and see our tradition as something silly, even though we might be paying a therapist an awful lot of money to get the same answers we can get by taking the underlying psychological and archetypal realities of our tradition seriously. Now, if you look below this video, I've made an entire series of these. I'm going to continue making them, so the entire playlist is linked down below. But the first question for Rosh Hashanah that needs to be asked then is, who have I harmed? What relationships have I harmed? But the second question, and this is so important that I can only ask after Rosh Hashanah, is then, and which of these people did I actually approach in order to repair those relationships, to say I'm sorry, to make amends? And that's our first challenge, to make actual lists, to write these things down, to challenge ourselves so that we can actually look and see, oh gee, for the last 5 years I've made really good lists, but then I haven't done anything with them. Well, there's test number 1. Here's the 40 people we've hurt. What's the state of those relationships today? But the other side of the test is if this year I say, you know, I haven't hurt anyone this year. And last year I said, well, I haven't hurt anyone this year. And the year before that I said, I'm the problem, because there's zero chance that I've gone through a couple weeks, let alone a couple years, without damaging a relationship, without hurting someone in a way that I need to make that better. So in order to celebrate this holiday and bring us into the meditation that I want to help us with this year and eventually answer the question I posed at the very beginning of the video, is to focus today on what I think the most powerful and enduring symbol of Rosh Hashanah is, and that would be the shofar. Now, it is a mitzvah, an obligation to hear the shofar blown on Rosh Hashanah. But why? For our health? Arbitrary? The symbols are beautiful. According to Midrash, it wasn't the sound of the Eternal's voice that we heard at Sinai. It was the sound of a shofar, and contained in that shofar were all the words that we could then find in Torah. That's good stuff. But the rabbis of the Talmud have the slightly better quote here. And we've got amazing images in our tradition. The Midrash that says that it wasn't that we heard the Eternal's voice, for example, on Sinai. It was actually that we heard the sound of a shofar, and all that became Torah was contained in that one sound. Having heard some people blow shofar extraordinarily well, I kind of understand that. But the quote that I want to focus on comes from Maimonides, from the Mishnah Torah, and he's quoting back to the Talmud, but I like how Maimonides formulates this. And we read in the laws of Teshuvah, the laws of repentance, even though the blowing of the shofar in Rosh Hashanah is a biblical decree, it hints at something. That is, wake up, sleepers, from your sleep, and slumberers, arise from your slumber. Search your ways and return in Teshuvah, and remember your Creator. See, traditionally, the first time we should hear the shofar is not at Rosh Hashanah. It's the first day of the month of Elul, in preparation for making that cheshbon nefesh. Wake up, wake up. Why? What's this talking about? It's not subtle. It's actually pretty obvious. Why don't we do teshuvah? Why don't we repair relationships? It sounds like that's the thing that we should be doing. Why don't we engage in that? And the answer is because we're too busy. If I say tomorrow I'm going to sit down and make myself this cheshbon nefesh and actually write these names down, and I don't, what are the things that distracted me, and were they more elevated than making this list? And whether we like it or not, most likely what we've done is we've spent that hour of time in one of our social media feeds, which is quite possibly where we have harmed some of those relationships. But even 1,000 years ago, in the time of Maimonides, or going back even further into the time of the Talmud, the acknowledgement was there that we have to exist in an everyday reality. We get up, we go to work, we take care of other people, we take care of our bodies, we make sure that we have places to live. In the process of doing that, it takes a very specific sort of energy. We get into an everyday trance, and we're not going to every day be focusing only on repairing our relationships, although those clues are there in our daily liturgy as well. But because we're human beings, we need a moment in time to hear something that is going to get us out of our trance, out of our stupor of the everyday, and say, wake up, we've got a job to do. And that's really how this continues. Look at how this text rolls out. Those who forget the truth amidst the futility of the moment, right? Our everyday, and are infatuated all their years with vanity and nothingness, right? I'm sorry if we say our highest priority is family, and we spend 15 minutes a day with family, but 3 hours a day flipping through our social media feeds, then our priority is not our family. We are giving our energy to vanity and nothingness. That might be 1,000-year-old language, but that's exactly what it is when we have human beings who need us and we are infatuated with getting one more like. Those who forget the truth amidst the futility of the moment and are infatuated all their years with vanity and nothingness that will not help and will not save. Examine your souls and improve your ways and your motivations. And yeah, the last sentence is going to sound that good old biblical hellfire and damnation, but listen behind what's being said here. Let each of you abandon his wicked ways and his thoughts, which are no good. Let's play the rabbinical version of which would you rather? Would you rather go to bed at a reasonable hour to make sure that you're able to function the next day, or spend 15 minutes more looking at YouTube? Would you rather get 15 more minutes of sleep to help you prepare for the next day, or spend 15 more minutes screaming at people that you don't know in an argument you're having on Twitter? Would you rather have 15 minutes with your partner who had a really hard day at work, or 15 more minutes yelling at strangers that we don't know in an argument on Facebook? Shofar is a symbol of wake up, because it's not that we are these horrible people that are choosing to ignore the people that need us most in order to continue thumbing through a feed. It's that we are captured in that trance of the moment. And the shofar maybe is sometimes the only thing that can wake us up if we take seriously to move out of that into something elevated. And that's actually what the symbol of the shofar is, not just waking up. When you start breaking it down, it's a symbol of brokenness. Because if we have only been spending our time in our quote-unquote wicked ways, in our nothingness, in our vanities, in the trance of getting through the everyday and the less meaningful things than the truly beautiful meaning things that are begging for us to be engaged with them, well, then we are in a state of brokenness without even realizing it, which is actually the answer to why we continue doing those things, because we're hurt and we feel hurt and we've experienced something in the last year, or many somethings in the last year, that have caused us to be broken. And rather than knowing how to deal with that, we shut out our anxieties with our arguments with strangers on our social media feed. And the shofar itself is the external symbol that points to the internal reality of this process of recognizing when we have been broken and how we move from brokenness back to wholeness. And if you've heard the shofar blown, especially if you've heard it blown well, you know that there are a variety of sounds that the shofar makes. And depending on your synagogue and the traditions, these are usually called out. They're written in the Machzor, written in the High Holy Days prayer book. And you'll hear someone call it tekiah, and you get a long blast. Then shivarim, and you'll get 3 kind of wailing blasts. And then truah, and you'll hear 9 sharp, pointed blasts. And then finally, tekiah, once again a long blast. And look at what we've seen. Wholeness being broken down more, and then becoming whole again. But the words, the meaning of the words, these aren't just sounds. These are actually meaningful concepts. Tekiah is the sound of a trumpet. It is a blast. But shevarim is shattered. It's the same root of what happened when Moses threw the tablets of the law when he saw the sin of the golden calf happening below him as he came down from Sinai. That's shevarim, that is brokenness. But what it's supposed to sound like is the sound that we make when we are so broken that we cry with our shoulders heaving. Truah, it's wailing. But it's an interesting kind of wailing. If you look at more tribal societies, there is usually a person at a funeral who is crying, sometimes in a ritual sort of way. From a Western mindset, it's hard to recognize what's actually happening, but this is relatively universal in tribal societies, also in Judaism and Judaism's history. And sometimes you'll have something like ululation, the la 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 sort of sound. Well, what is that? That is communal mourning. It is when we move from the brokenness where our shoulders are heaving. The only way to find our way back to a moment of wholeness is to begin gathering with others. Why do you think in Judaism we are required to pray in a minyan in order to say Kaddish? We become broken. We are alone in a profound way, but the only way to get back to any type of wholeness is through community. We are not to mourn alone. Eventually, we are to gather with others. Even if we don't know what to say, even if they don't know what to say, it is through the ritualization that starts to bring us back out, which leads once again to tekiah, wholeness. And the wholeness that we experience after we've been broken, it won't be the same as before. No two sounds of the shofar are the same. This tekiah will sound different than this one. We move from wholeness to wholeness through brokenness, and listening to this over and over again on Rosh Hashanah is the external reminder that that's actually what we're going through. You see, on the one hand, we can create this cheshbon nefesh, we can create this list, and we can go through and maybe or maybe not do the work, but the reason we hear the shofar, not just wake us up from our everyday trances, but to bring us back to the reality that the reason we hurt others is because we are lashing out in our own brokenness, and the only way that we can stop lashing out at others is to take seriously the process by which we ourselves become whole again. No whole person destroys another person and makes them broken. We as a society continue breaking each other because we as individuals are broken, which then brings up the third and final iterative question. I've gone through and I've already asked, who have I hurt? And hopefully I've written them down. And then at some point after Rosh Hashanah, I'm going to ask, which work did I do? Which relationships am I actively trying to repair? But the third one, and maybe the one that will get our attention, maybe the one when we hear the shofar, that we'll finally, after years of hearing sermons about the importance of teshuvah, that we'll actually go through and take this seriously, is the question, which things hurt us, broke us this year, that we're unable to deal with? And so we're blocking them out instead of recognizing our brokenness, instead of crying as we need to cry, instead of going through the process of recognizing that we're shattered and wailing, that instead we walk deeper into our addictions, spend more time trying to cover it up by getting one more like, one more piece of external acknowledgement that ultimately doesn't lift us up because it leads us just to need more and to want more. Which moments of brokenness have we not yet begun to heal? Which of course brings us back full circle. In the Torah, it tells us on the first day of the seventh month, that is Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the month of Tishrei, that we are to have a Yom Truah. And when we read that, we think, oh, a day where the shofar is blown, except for Truah is wailing. We are to have a day where we recognize our brokenness. We've got all these wishes for a sweet new year, the apples and the honey. We do have wonderful melodies. We have exciting gatherings of people that we maybe haven't seen since last year. If that's the case, we should probably be in shul a little bit more often. But the purpose of the holiday is an exploration on brokenness so that we will begin to heal, which includes teshuvah. And according to the sages of the Talmud, the two most joyful days of the Jewish calendar are Tu B'Av, which is Jewish Valentine's Day. So traditionally when shidduch is made, when you find or are matched with your life partner, and Yom Kippur. And yes, I've said that in synagogues before, and I've had people roll their eyes, and I've had people complain to boards that how dare this ignorant rabbi says this, even though it's in the Talmud. Why is it possibly the most joyful day? Because if we have done our cheshbon nefesh, if we have recognized our brokenness, if we have actively worked to call up that person and say, I'm so sorry, I was in a bad place. I'm still in a bad place, but I recognize I took it out on you, and we haven't talked in 6 months, and I'm so sorry. How can I make this up to you? How can we get back to how we should be? And then we do that a couple times. And we get to Yom Kippur, and we hear the Kol Nidre, which says all things that we've bound ourselves to, like being angry and being addicted, I release, I let go. The emotion that we experience is happiness, profound joy, enduring joy, because the rituals of Yom Kippur are then the recognition of the work that we've done. The other parts of the liturgy of Yom Kippur, which we'll get to next week, the ones that seem scary, the ones that seem like this is the day of mourning, well, those are a last-ditch attempt by our sages, by the Eternal, to get us to finally, even if it's last minute, look in the mirror and say, we've got work to do. Shana Tov, everyone. We'll see you next time.